Okay, so here we are. This is part 2 of the Copic Harbor drawing that I'm working on. So in the earlier video you saw me build up some of the layers of colours and to get down the base layers. So next I'm going to start adding in a bit of the detail. Now I may have made a mistake on this piece because my photo isn't clear enough for me to quite tell if that's sea or paving, and I get the feeling that actually is that's a very dark grey. So what I'm going to do is start by editing this piece, because basically what it is a path, the rail, and then there is about a foot plus on the other side. So I've already put the blue on. How am I going to do that? So this is where your blender pen or your zero is going to be your friend. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, using the chisel tip, is to go over all of it very lightly with a layer of the zero. Now as that dries, that colour is going to get lighter. Now because the colour is so dark, it's not going to bleed out completely back to white. That's nowhere's that going to happen. But if I can get it subtle enough, and it is starting to move, then I can put greys over this and fix it that way. So it's a bit of a silly error on my part, but that's part of learning when you're drawing, is you make mistakes and you learn from them. So there it goes. I'm just going to bring the camera in so you can see that's lightened off quite a lot. So that's lightened that. So that needs to dry, and then I might be able to get another layer in there. My only worry about that part right now is that basically the dampness of the paper could affect it. Actually off camera it's a lot paler than what it looks like on camera. So ignoring that slight mistake, which like I say I'll patch up shortly, onto a little bit of the boat detail. So where to start? So I'm going to finish off this big boat, and this was a big boat, and the colour that I'm going to use is YG91 because it had a kind of canvas top on it, and we're just going to fix that bit. And any white areas that aren't as white as I'd like them, I'll bring over the Posco pen just to fix that. The nice thing about the Copics is that you do have that flexibility with them. You've got a really nice teeny weeny nib if you need it. There we go. And I actually had curtains in, which were a kind of greeny colour. Now I'm not going absolutely super insane on detail, because that's not quite the aim here. I just want to pick out certain bits. So just going to use, and let's see. So I've got a little pile of pens next to me now. You'll probably see them run across in a minute. So T3, so it's a toner free. And I'm just going to bring in a tiny line and just get that box redone. Now, like a lot of modern boats, this one does have a rail, and I will put that in with a silver pen. But now I can just put in the little gangways. And I can come through with a Copic fine line pen or one of the other brands, and then put in the really fine detail. So I'm going to come into this boat that's behind, and I'm just going to pick out a couple of little bits. And then again just picking up to the walkway. So this boat actually had quite a bright little blue cover on it, so we're just going to put a tiny bit of that detail in there. And the actual body of the boat was a blue colour, would you believe? But it wasn't a blue, which is quite handy. I can just use the T3 to just put in a little bit of shadow. In fact, I can come through with a T5 because there was actually quite a bit of shadow under this boat. I can just push that slightly. So I'm just going to use the T5 again, just to do the walkway now. Now this harbour is actually quite good because not only does it have some gangways and walkways which are on long concrete pylons, they're absolutely covered in barnacles, whelks and all sorts, but it also has floating pontoons, and those floating pontoons can be taken all around the area if needed. So the shape of the harbour changes quite often, and there's also a dry dock area where if somebody, while the tide's down, because once the tide goes out that's it, you can walk around here quite contently. Once the tide's out, that's it. You can tie your boat up to this little station and just do some quick hull checks if you want to. This is quite important for a lot of people, and especially when people want to buy a boat and they just want to quickly give it a look over. It's a good way for everyone to take a quick peep without having to get it out, put it on a trailer, take it round to the local shipyard and all of that business. So I'm just going to try and pick up one of the other boats, and I'm going to do that with T3. Sorry, T1. I know this one's here, but this one was a lot of it was in shadow. And a lot of it was covered up with a really dark navy cover, so it's quite a hard one to spot. Sometimes when you're going to put down a colour and you're not feeling confident about it, if you're not feeling confident that when you put that colour down it's going to be in the wrong place or not look right, step back, have a think, and then if you're still not 100% sure and you've rechecked and checked your drawing again, put a lighter tone down and build up from your lighter tones, because that way if you make a mistake you can use your blender to push it back. So yeah, back to the T5, because there's an engine back here. And I can pick out a lot of the detail with the fine liner pens. I'm just going to use a T3 just to soften up some of those dark bits. If ever you get a chance to draw boats, I certainly recommend it. There are so many shapes, sizes. It's absolutely amazing. It's almost like there's no two boats the same in the harbour. And it means that you really have to pay a lot of attention to your drawing. Because if you get the model wrong and just assume it looks a particular way, it won't look right with the main drawing. So the highest area of detail will be this little front line of boats, and then I can put less detail into that background bit. Now there's an important piece over on the right hand side which I haven't actually even mapped in. This is very naughty of me. And it's because I didn't pay attention to my actual photo. So I was looking at the drawing and the printout and not the physical photo that I've got on the computer screen. So this piece here is a cast shadow to a bridge that is give or take here. So I need to put that in. Luckily I did it in light enough colours. So I'm going to use the T3 to map it in. So I sort myself out. In fact, I think I kind of mapped it in here. Yeah. It's only I can. This is one of the access points to the harbour, and there's a couple around, but they're all locked, so you have to be a key holder to get access. Now this is a lot of the detail because it's very fine metal work. Once again, the detail will be going in pen. I was wondering where that cast shadow was. So I'm going to add green because it's oddly enough green metal. There's also a slightly angled green roof, well, partially green roof. This is why it is quite important to pay attention to your reference material. So I know this bit goes around there. Now I've let that piece dry a bit, so I can add a little bit more of the zero of it. Now you saw me put a little bit of grey over that, and that was just to see what the saturation level was like. So it's kind of a layer of the zero, then let it dry, layer of zero. And it is toning down quite a lot. So next I'm just going to add in a little bit more detail. Now you know I said about the floating pontoon. There's actually a floating pontoon down this end. So it kind of goes a little group, then the walkway comes here, goes along, and then there's this floating bit here. And that's one of the spots where the jet skis moor up, because there's a fair few jet skiers. You don't see them out on the water much, but you do see them kind of just sat on the harbour. So I'm going to use the T3. It's a nice neutral colour to map things out with. And that will continue on down there. Now, I'm just going to bring this piece along here to there. Then I'm going to go T1. So I'm not 100% sure on how to map these guys out. And because a lot of it's in shadow, I'm going to block in that area just with the T1. Then I can come back to that when I'm feeling a little bit more kind of confident. Just use the T1 here and there. Makes a nice filler. And I'm actually going to put this onto the so-called white railings, and the reason is because these are in shadow, so they're not 100% white. There we go. Now I'm going to pick a boat that's over here and zoom in and see if I can get this one down. Some of the boat names are quite hilarious. We actually have one called the Meerkat. That's a private fishing kind of boat. So most early mornings you see the Meerkat getting loaded up and taking a load of chaps out with their rods, all hoping for a good day's fishing. And then there's a couple literally at before 6 o'clock. You literally see them all piling in and off they go. And some days they actually just look like little bathtubs going out. But they always come back safe. Well, every time I've seen them go off, they've always come back safe. Because the areas around Dorset were highly active during the wars and such for the Navy because of the ports. A lot of that naval, how can I say that? A lot of the naval thinking and feeling is around. So there was a case, I think it was last year, a chap got stuck. I think he had engine failure or something, and couldn't get a proper signal through to the Coast Guard, but luckily the signal got through to another fishing boat, and they went and found him and towed him in. And a lot of people, whenever you walk, say, on the island on Portland or anywhere around the coast, if ever you see a swimmer out there or a canoe and they're waving their arms or making a lot of movement or something doesn't strike you, it's better to just call the Coast Guard, and well, it pays off quite often. We used to actually have an advert on the TVs where it showed a couple walking along and then they saw someone waving their arms. It was done in the cartoon. And the little speech bubble came up as if the people on the cliff could hear them. Kind of help call Coast Guard, and a lot of frantic arm waving. But it kind of gave you the idea that that you need to understand that someone in the sea waving their arms isn't just waving hello. They could be calling for help, so always pay attention. I'm just going to add in a little bit of colour onto this one. See, when I was a child growing up, we used to go down to Cornwall a lot, and quite often you would have the, well, gosh, we went everywhere, Woolacombe, St Ives, St Austell, all sorts of places, and it was wonderful. As a kid, being able to just run around the beaches, go rock pooling, climbing up the cliffs, all sorts, absolutely great fun. But over certain beaches you would always get the sea rescue helicopters come over when they were on a job, and everyone would stop on the beach, stand still, because you all knew if the helicopter was out it meant something serious was going on. And as a habit, everyone used to wave to them. And eventually they actually put a sign up saying, please don't wave to the helicopter, because the guys are looking for people who are waving in distress, and the members of the public waving to them were confusing them. So sadly we could no longer wave to the helicopter people, when the pilots and the guys, but they always waved back. It was really nice. You would always get away from the helicopters. Sometimes you get gestures kind of saying, as if saying, where's the issue? Because back then the radios weren't as good. They didn't have all the technology that a lot of the helicopters carry nowadays. So sometimes public all pointing in one direction was a darn good way of knowing roughly where the incident was. I mean, I don't think I never really did with swim and sea, because I'm not the best of swimmers. But I've always been told how to swim in the sea, so you don't just keep on going out, you need to know about riptides and things like that. But I do like being around beaches and stuff, and I mean, if you live anywhere near the coast, definitely make sure that you're a good swimmer. I pay for lessons just to make sure that I can swim semi-decently, because I struggle to swim above water. I could swim underwater, no problem. If I didn't need air, I'd be quite content under there. And underwater, I'm quite a fast swimmer. I just can't swim on top of, well, like over water. That's another boat added in, and just use a little bit of the T1 just to get the shadow on that. Right, now I'm going to put in a little bit of, oh, that's what I want. I haven't taken the lid off this one yet. Oh, just woke the cat. Poor Bilbo. E42, I think. It's just to add a little bit of detail to the railing, because I would say it's not a pure white railing. It does have a fair bit of damage. Where people have grasped the railing to have a look over, they've worn away the paint. where kids stand on the rails, it wears them down. And sadly the councils can't always afford to have them repainted. It's not so much a case of not being able to afford to paint, it's the labour costs as well. Because people aren't going to go and paint the railings for free. Especially when there's metres and metres of them. Now I'm going to use E30 and just add a tiny bit into the water, just near this cast shadow. There's actually quite a lot of that colour under there. So I'm going to come back over to the buildings and just give them a little bit of E30. So what, it's much harder to draw at this scale than it is to draw at weenie scale. Now this bit here is mostly a beige colour. Sandy. Use that quite a lot. So I'm just blocking in little bits of colour. I'm looking at a lot more detail now just to pick up some of those tones. Eek, pardon me. Still not got over the cough of this cold that I've been having. Don't like being ill. So I'm just gonna see if I can get my camera to come up any sharper, because I think the image is showing a bit too blurred. Hope that's improved it a little bit. Right. So I'm going to add a little bit of detail into the background now. So I need to count my houses, because I've got two here, the modern apartments, and then that one. So that's right. So for this one, I'm going to use a little bit of the YG91 to just push the shadow. Now the building's a funny colour. There's no denying it is a very, very strange coloured building. And in fact it has a very dark roof. So I'm going to use, I don't want to go too dark on the browns because I don't want it to kind of be too strong in the background. So I'll try an E25. Because I can always add a grey over it. There's a bit behind it where there's some chimneys. And then here there's another roof. And then down here there's another roof. I'm trying to keep the roofs that actually match their colours quite close. back with the YG colour there, because there's quite a dark shadow in between those. Now behind this bit here, there's actually a dome, so I'm going to put that in with the B12. Literally just is a little blue dome. That's part of one of the buildings. And then I'm going to use the E30 just to put a little bit more detail into that bit. I think if you're going to do a townscape, I definitely think it's important to get at least a few of the buildings right. Because I suppose if this image is going to be for sale, the last thing you want is somebody to buy it and instantly say, well, where is that? Especially if they are familiar with the area. Mind you, I don't think they would buy it if they couldn't recognise it, but so just by picking out those little groups of places, that's changed that area quite a lot. And once again, like I say, I'll put in white highlights as I go and pick up some of the detail with the pen. So this funny building. Now I know I used I think it was E71, but I'm actually going to bring in E70 because I think I need to lighten it off. It's a bit of a funny one because you've got these traditional style houses, proper ye old fashioned pub type buildings, and then you've got almost like modern flats thrown in there as well. So it's a very much eclectic mix. But a lot of the coastal towns were bombed out during the wars, so a lot of the historical architecture is gone, and then with modernisation as well, huge amount of buildings has been lost through redevelopment. I mean, on one side of Weymouth Harbour, there used to be a Tudor mansion, huge building. They tore it down, and in fact, you can still see on this railing when you look over it into the sea, you can see the bricks of the house because the builders chucked nearly everything over the side. It's cheaper than taking it somewhere, isn't it? And now, right now, there sits the most ugliest cube of concrete that ever existed, and that's been closed because it was a council building, and that's now closed, and they're having a row over who gets to use the land. And you know what the worst bit is? It's the whole thing is so corrupted by the council's demand for cash. The building will probably be reused in its current state, though there's rumours of it having concrete cancer. So some of the builders have said they'd tear it down, put brand new houses in there. Other people have said, oh, we'll try and make something a bit more in keeping with the area. And some builders have said, oh, we'll just use it as is. So a lot of the town and the people who live there are very nervous because it's one of the big buildings in the town, and it's an eyesore already. So the last thing they want is it to be made a bigger eyesore, because you come down to the coast with a picturesque views, not horrendous architecture. Right. I'm going to ignore this little bit in the middle because I'm probably just going to do that as a blur. There's a lot of houses and flats and stuff behind there, and I'm going to try and do this little aisle. So I'm going to use a YG. Actually, let's go on to the E25 and let's sort the roofs out. Good thing is, most of this you can't see because of all of the masts. So I'm not so worried about the detail here. And some of these are red brick. So I'm going to use the E11, which is a bit pink, but I should be able to tone it down a little bit. And you can see I've still got, hopefully you should be able to see there's still pencil lines still visible. That's another good thing about the Copics, is that because they're quite opaque, in the lighter colours you can build up over pencil and still see your marks, which is really handy. Oh, the rest of these buildings are a cream colour, so I can leave them like that for now. Then you've got Debenhams down here. Now Debenhams has got a grey coloured roof. And that's next to, let's see, that's close to the multi-storey car park. Not a very happy multi-storey car park either, may it be said. A lot of jumpers and a lot of attempts. It's quite tragic really that people are driven to feeling that way, that they feel that's the only way out. I think also it's because the roof car parking doesn't have sorry, doesn't have proper like safety rails. But hopefully there's not going to be many more of them for a while. Okay, so next gonna have a go at sorting out the boat shadows. So these bits just along here. So for the starters, I'm going to start with B39 and just add on this one. And it sounds easy at first when you think a reflection is just a reversed image, but when you put the reflection on water, it actually completely changes it. It distorts and bends and does everything that you don't want it to do. So I'm going to need the T1 because I can now, as I pick up each of the reflections, I can start to add in the missing little bits of detail. In this case, I can just literally use the T1 to mark out where bits are, and I'll be using the finer pens to get that detail. So the bigger boat's a little bit more challenging, but I can still use the T1. And in fact, I'm going to bring in the N4. And in some places you're going to see me using full marks, others you're going to see kind of dots, dashes and slashes. And this is due to the distortion from the water. These aren't quite the finished reflections, so there's going to be a lot more detail added into these. So next, the boat that was for sale. As I thought, there was something very important here. There was a little I think it was a tannoy machine or something just put there. So I'm going to bring in a T3. And this one's reflection was actually quite distorted, so it kind of came away from the boat. And there's a little white bit on top. Fact, where's my thingamabob? Bear with me. Right, so this is the Posca marker that I've been talking about, and the pen I might use to do the fine detail might be the Faber-Castell Pitt pen. So we'll see how it goes. I'm just going to actually have a go at adding a little bit of detail to this one. And then any areas that I wanted highlighted, I can just put the little marker on. Like so. And that hopefully is going to work. I'm feeling happier with that. Just wish I could get this camera to focus on it. I just took a peep at the cat, and she's well and truly zonked out, bless her. So in fact what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the railing over here and just add in a little bit of the detail. You'll note that I'm doing this in quite a sketchy style, and this is mostly because the original drawing was extremely sketchy style. I can actually just use some random marks to indicate the wear onto the pipe. And then if I'm not happy with some parts, so say I want something a little bit darker, I can come back in with my darker pen of the group. This time I'm following the actual shape more. Also whenever I've put markers down and then put a pen over them, it makes me feel a bit more confident in the marks that I've made, so it can be quite handy. Because sometimes you'll do your ink lines first and then put your pen, but sometimes it's nice to work pen first, then ink lines. And it does give a big difference. So let's see. Nice thing about the Posca markers is that you can actually go over them then I can add, say, a little bit more detail. Once again, just plonk in a little bit more detail where I want it. If I want to use the lighter pen, just come through with the lighter pen. So the pavement, for that, I'm probably going to go with a mix of N's and T's. And the reason for this is because the pavement is in different colours where slabs have been lifted and changed and things like that. It's not 100% the same slabs each way. But I'm only going to put a few actual slabs with detail in. Once again, so that it's not too distracting. So that was the T3, and then I can come in with T1. In fact, I can fill in a couple of bits there. That just gives a little indication, and I can add a bit more tone and detail to that in a bit. So I'm actually going to add a bit of detail to the big boat. I get the feeling I'm going to have to do a third video with this because I'm not going to get it complete, and I am going to have to go to bed soon. I've got the joy of the dentist tomorrow. Ew, I hate dentists. Not as people, lovely people, no, it's just torture. So I can now start to add in a bit more detail onto these bits. So I can now just sketch in a little bit of that missing detail. Things like the safety rails. And a little bit of the ropes. And behind this boat there is a really large mast from another ship, so I'm just going to add that in. You don't really see the boat where it joins. Then there's another mast here. Comes up, and that one also goes over here. So when I do the reflection, I can now add in things like that mast. Then there's another mast here, and another one here. There. So many masts, it's very, very difficult to keep an eye on them all. Right, so in fact I'm going to put in a couple of the masts. So once again using the posky. For the thinnest lines I'm going to do broken lines, but for the thicker lines I'll do full lines. For some of them I won't need to really put any lines in. Underneath this boat there's a very, very tall mast. And there's another one around here. So now I can add in, I'm going to add a little bit of detail over these. just some very, very loose sketch detail on the background. So hopefully that's shown you how the drawing is now starting in places where I started to pull out the detail, and the difference that from just going from the markers to adding pen layers on top does make. So I'm going to call it a night for now. Not sure when I'm going to be able to come back to this one. Depends what happens with stuff tomorrow, but hopefully I'll be back to this soon and be able to show you a little bit more detail of getting this drawing finished and making a pretty decent effort of it. So till next time, thank you very much for watching, all the best and happy drawing to you.